All right, rock and roll. Welcome one, welcome all. Friend and foe alike are welcome here. If you're a foe, I don't really like you, but you're welcome to listen. Maybe you will educate yourself. Maybe you will grow in the ways of the Force. You know, we're getting pretty close. I was talking to Brother Scott on the podcast, and he was telling me, May 4th is May the 4th be with you. And he says, now there's a day, May 5th, May the Sith be with you. Yeah, I didn't really get it either until 5th, Sith. Okay. He's a little more educated about that stuff than I am, but, we'll hash that out tomorrow on our podcast. First and foremost, if you could kindly hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us. We're talking a little different here. Leave some comments if you'd like. I usually start out with a little personal story, if there is one. Some days there isn't. Probably because I have a vapid and empty life, but I like to act like I got stuff going on. Okay? So today, I go to the gym. I go to my parents' house. Believe me, that's enough of a workout. Okay, I'm doing stuff. I'm taking out trash. I'm doing dishes. I literally do more stuff at their house than I do at mine, right? And I'm trying to watch my health, and my mom makes lunch, and then she makes like this cheese taco. And I look at it and I go, oh my God, there's so much cholesterol in there. I'm like, oh man, I really don't want to eat it because I made it just for you. I'm like, oh man. Okay, Mom. All right. My mom is the only place I will eat food other than a restaurant. Literally. I mean, I'll eat it at my house. There's no doubt. But like through the years, friends have invited me to their house and like, I'll be like, oh, I got a stomach issue. I got this. I got that. Kind of like being in a relationship and the person doesn't want to have sex with you. And they could literally come up with more excuses than you ever heard in your life. Right. And so I ate the cheese taco, and she's like, I never made one for you. And I'm thinking to myself, thank God you didn't. I don't really like this, but, oh, man, it's delicious, Mom. She goes, maybe I'll have to make it for you again. I go, oh, Mom, I'm trying to watch it. I'm trying to watch my weight. I'm on the verge of becoming a circle. So I go to the gym. I put my headphones in, listen to a podcast. Maybe I can figure out some ideas for the show tonight. And it's Sunday afternoon. It's really a desolate place. It's like Donald Trump's brain. There's nothing there. Nobody's there, right? And so I'm on the treadmill. There's probably 2 rows of treadmills. There's probably 20 in each, right? And I'm in one row. I'm the only person on it. There's somebody in the back row. They're on theirs doing their thing, whatever. And I'm just walking, doing my couple miles an hour, just, watching the basketball game, whatever. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it's just effing weird. I'm trying to get to that 10-minute before I drop the F-bomb here. And I'm there, and I understand gym etiquette's a little different for everybody. Like me, I carry a towel. I try to wipe down the machine. Some people actually go over, get paper towels and disinfect. I mean, look, I get it. I don't understand any mother effer who goes into the gym and doesn't bring a towel. Like, can't you wipe down the equipment? Like, come on, man. This isn't a petri dish. We don't want COVID part 2, right? But whatever, okay? Whatever. And so I'm on the treadmill. I'm about 10 minutes in. And next thing I know, this kid, comes and gets on the treadmill right next to me. It wasn't like he went through 2 or 3 and they didn't work or whatever. Because believe me, in a gym, when you're using the equipment, literally 40% of it doesn't work. Okay, I get that. But at least make the attempt that you're going to effing try and get on there and be, oh, wow, this one doesn't work. Oh, this one. Before you get right next to me. Back in the day, I used to go to the movies with Evil Rich, right? And like the first couple times, this is before there was assigned seating. Yeah, They had movies back then, right? Black and white, right? You know, click, 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 click. Yeah. Gone with the Wind we saw, first edition, right? Opening week. And the first couple times, we'd sit in the middle of a row and he'd sit right next to me. I'm like, hey, man, give me one seat. It's no phobia. Just, God, give me 2 feet, right? And I'm going to give everybody a hack out there. I'm going to give you a little life hack, okay? Unless you just like being smothered by human beings, okay? And if you do, you're weird, okay? But, hey, I regress. So if you go to the movies, and I am the movie expert. I literally am the movie expert. They make you get assigned seating now, right? So you want to be in the middle of a row. They're going to give you seats 9 and 10, right? Okay, you're going with your honey, you're going with your significant other, you're going with your kid or whatever. You don't get 9 and 10, you get 8 and 12, right? And then you just sit in 9 and 10, and then you got a buffer. You already bought the tickets, right? And if somebody happens to come up and they're that creepoid who decides they're going to buy the 2 seats between 2 people, you can go, oh, we made a mistake, whatever. And then that person get away from because they are a serial killer. Just telling you, man. Anybody who has 2 individual seats and they want to sit between them, no, don't trust them. Just don't trust them. And so this guy gets on the treadmill and he puts his earbuds and he starts running. And I'm in the gym who just really disappoints you because this guy's running balls out for literally 5 or 8 minutes. And I'm like, maybe I'll just have a heart attack. Maybe I'll just slip on the treadmill and fall to his untimely death. Anything for my personal space. I'm just saying. Don't hate me. I'm just saying what we're all thinking. And then after 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, my God. Now do I have to act like I got to move, I got to go to the restroom, whatever. Finally, I told myself, okay, in 20 minutes, if this mother effer is still here, I'm going to act like I'm going to the restroom, and then I'm going to come out the other side, and then I'm going to go find another treadmill. Well, thank God after 15 minutes, this a-hole left. I don't understand why people just can't give you some personal space. Just a little rant, okay? We're going to get off and going. Boy, I got some stuff for today. And I'm going to tell you something. We're only going to deal with one thing today, and it's going to be dark in the beginning. But I'm going to give you some hope. Yeah, I know. Hey, do we got the right podcast, John? Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to give you some hope here. And for everybody out there who thinks, I can't believe people would support Trump, I can't believe people would support MAGA, I am going to blow your mind. Yeah, that's why you come here, because this is the best podcast in the world. Of course, I don't have the numbers to prove that, but it's quality versus quantity. Maybe one day it'll be both, but we'll find out how that all works out. So I went to the Tesla protest, and one of the things, I sat there and I talked to the people for about 20 minutes, and obviously they're very passionate about it. But something I noticed is there's a Starbucks down the street. There's a parking lot there. And on that street, there was 2 Upland Police Department. Yeah, Upland. It was in Upland, California. 2 Upland Police Department cruisers at the end of the block just watching the protesters. Okay? And then I noticed that most of the people, including myself, I didn't do this intentionally. I'm not smart enough. They parked on the other side by the car wash, and they walked down to their little protest, our protest, because I'm totally supportive of it, and I'm not demeaning it in any way, shape, or form. But, let's see, did I screw up there? Yeah, we're going to have to go with that. It's a little too late, Johnny. And so I noticed they all parked down there by the car wash, and then I asked one lady who had a great shirt. She had, we don't need and it had Elon's name and then an F in front of it, felon. I was like, yeah, that's pretty innovative, right? And I asked her, I said, why are you parking a long way down there? And she goes, look, I don't need no problems. I'm here to protest, but I don't need problems. And I was like, wow, that's the world we're living in, right? That the fear of retribution is real. And we're living with the president who is very vindictive and very, very vengeance oriented. You ever see the Wrath of Khan in Star Trek? Khan ain't got nothing on Trump, right? So we're going to get into the story about how President Trump is using the power of the federal government to intimidate his opponents and rain down vengeance on them for perceived slights that he thinks they have done against him. And also, he's taking it out now on law firms, academia, just whoever's in his crosshairs, right? Within the legal establishment, at least two law firms Trump has had political skirmishes with, let's say, in the past, have chosen to cut deals to avert any future engagement or hostility with him. Also in academia, we've seen where Columbia University, when he threatened to hold $400 million in funding away from them, they capitulated and cut the kneecaps out of free speech by stopping any free speech going on their campus. And we've went through this story before, but the Muslim and the Palestinian protesters, Trump erroneously said they were anti-Semitic, and that if you allowed those anti-Semitic voices on your campus, we are going to cut the $400 million in funding. Of course, Columbia has a $14 billion endowment that could to take care of that, but they capitulated. They kissed the ring. All right, that's what it is. Also, inside the White House, the AP is not allowed in the press briefing room because they have still refused to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I mean, God, how effing petty can the president be? I mean, really? Do you really think you're going to change it? Really? Aren't we still calling X Twitter a couple years later? But, whatever, right? And Trump replaced AP with Newsmax and other pro-Trump outlets. He wants all the news. He wants to hold on to it. Also, inside the administration, Trump has fired over 17 inspector generals, and these people are basically the ombudsman, let's call it the referee of what goes on in those departments or those programs to make sure there is no corruption. I had this debate the other day with someone, and they were saying, well, Trump wants to get rid of all the corruption. I said, well, if he wants to get rid of the corruption, why do you get rid of the inspector generals? Why do you do that? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, they're the people. I mean, if you have crime on your block, you don't get rid of the cop because there's some kid down at the corner with a bottle of mace. It's the same goddamn thing, right? And he also fired the head of government ethics. Why he did that, who knows, right? The one source that is pushing back on Trump is the federal judiciary, right? Well, Trump ain't going for that too much. Donnie don't like that. He don't like people telling him no, right? I mean, isn't that why he physically accosted E. Jean Carroll? Huh. I wonder if she ever got her money. I hope she did. It's like $50 million. Where we've had judges who repeatedly and halted or reversed policies that Trump is trying to do. And one of them, which didn't fail, the judge in the Venezuelan deportation case, told them that they couldn't send the quote-unquote 232 Venezuelan gang members back to El Salvador. Well, they thought they were going to Venezuela. He actually sent them to an El Salvador prison with No crimes that we have been made aware of, no convictions. That's what due process is. If the government accuses you of something, they have to show evidence of what you have done, not say, hey, that they're just a bad person. They're a bad person, nothing to see here, right? Well, that's what they did, and they shipped them all down there, and right now they're in a San Salvador prison, and we have idiots like Kristi Noem in her little me Barbie outfits in front of cages of men incarcerated saying this is what happens if you're a violent criminal. We don't even know what the charges were against these people. Kristi Noem is literally the stupidest human being in the world. I think Trump hired her so he actually could seem smart. She is, in my mind, Kristi the dog killer Noem. Trump also last week boasted about his effectiveness so far in dealing with his perceived enemies. On Wednesday at the White House, he gleefully said that he'd be able to pressure law firms and colleges because the Biden administration's failures after he lost in 2020 had allowed him to return to power and do things that we could have never done in a traditional context. You see, this is his quote, you see what we're doing with the colleges, and they're all bending and saying, thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much. Yeah, right. Kick me in the nuts, and I'm going to say, please, sir, give me another. Yeah, that's what they're doing. And then he continued, and nobody can believe it, including law firms that have been so horrible, law firms that nobody would believe, and they're just saying, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Nobody can believe it, and there's more coming. You know what? Donnie lies, but he ain't lying there. He has directed Pam Bondi, the director of she's the Attorney General, basically the commander of the Department of Justice, to go after any law firms that have aggrieved him. First one we're going to talk about is Perkins Coie. It's a traditionally Democratic law firm, and it's been in his crosshairs for a bloody long time, especially since 2016 when it was involved in the Russian dossier. That's basically where they said Russia had blackmail on Trump. They had a P video he was involved in a Moscow, hotel, whatever. And also Covington and Burling, where the White House suspended all their security clearances of the lawyers representing former counsel Jack Smith. That was the guy who was going after Trump for keeping the secret documents at Mar-a-Lago. Nothing to see there, right? So they're going after a former special prosecutor of the DOJ who now is a private citizen. He resigned because he knew he was going to get fired. And I did a deep dive on this, and I don't know if it really you wondered about it at all. I did. Why did so many of these people, high-ranking people, resign? Why not? We've heard the argument of fight. I hear it on all these podcasts, and I was thinking, yeah, why aren't they fighting? So I read that if you go on your own volition, quote unquote, resign, you get 2 years of health care for your family, and you're allowed to get unemployment and other benefits. If you're fired, those things don't exist. So at the end of the day, I understand it. I get a little tired. When I see these problems out there, the typical podcaster says, I'd stand for that. I'd blah, 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 blah. Me strong, me fight Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, I can understand what that is. Back in the day, I was involved with MoveOn.org. This is probably about 10 years ago. And I asked them point blank, I said, why, the Koch brothers are incredibly rich. They're incredibly evil. They're incredibly huge. They're very Republican. The Koch brothers are literally one of the biggest backers of the Republican agenda for the last 20 years, right? Charles Koch, his brother David's dead. And they did a very extensive study, and they came to the conclusion, the study did, that the United States government and the business community would save $3 trillion a year if we had universal health care. Yeah, universal health care. Now, that's obviously something the Republicans have always been against, right? And I was asking because I didn't understand it. I mean, it would be so much easier for business if they didn't have to deal with the HR, they didn't have to deal with the paperwork, if everybody just had health care, you wouldn't have to deal with all that stuff. And the people astutely at MoveOn.org, because I do have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn from you. Make sure you leave some comments, okay? Not just the trolls, okay, please. They said, because that's how they control you. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, and they showed me studies where women, something like 70, it's been a while, 70 to 80% of women, when their husband loses a job, they don't think about losing the job. The first thing they think about is health care. And that's how they control you, right? Because if you got to go find new health care, that scares the bejesus, because I might have to get new doctors. I might have to get new specialists. I might, whatever that is. Then it all starts to make sense, right? And then you have a great man like Obama who comes in and he allows a little more transferability, portability, whatever the actual term is. And granted, there's a lot of improvements that can be made in the healthcare system. But we've seen the Republicans, they wanted to get rid of the ACA. Thank God for John McCain, rest in peace. He's the only thing that stopped us from losing that thing in his first go-round. It's funny, I don't see him going forward on the second go-round, but you know what? We're just starting up. We're 9 weeks in. God, it seems like so much longer. So Trump is going after these law firms. He extorted $40 million in pro bono work from one law firm in New York. Pam Bondi is reviewing law firms that have represented Democratic activists, people like that. It doesn't really sound very good, right? But there is hope. There is hope. And I am going to find that hope right now. All right. And the hope came back, right? So thank God for super producer Stacy. God bless her. Showed me where the pause button was. I didn't have to scrap that whole segment. I'm sure you're pretty happy too. Oh, God. I was hoping it was over, John. I was hoping it was over. So, we've got this incredible cabal. Let's call it a cabal in the administration. And we sit there and go, how can everybody support this guy? I mean, doesn't that, I'm sure you think that, right? Why? And I've thought about it a million times, right? Why? How do they do it? How are we so diametrically opposed? Listen to this. So, almost 100 years ago, we had the Great Depression. And that was a series of events that led to the entire collapse of the United States economic system. It was really highlighted with the stock market crash of October of 1929. The president at the time was Herbert Hoover. The Dow Jones at the time, now the stock market was relatively a new thing back then, was on September 3rd, 1929, it was at 381. I think when Biden left the office, it was at 42,000. Yeah, come a long way, baby. Come a long way. It lost 25% of its value in 2 days in October. So basically it lost 90 points. Okay? By July 8th of 1932, the Dow Jones was at 41 points. 41. The stock market was almost non-existent. Okay? Now listen to these numbers. When the election went down in November of 1932, Hoover was running again. He ran for re-election. Okay. Against FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, literally one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. Unemployment rate was 25%. 1 out of 4 Americans was out of a job. Didn't have anything. The change in the GDP from 29 to 32 was 28%. Now, most economists will tell you if the GDP drops 2%, that is a severe recession. This went 28% down in 3 years. The change in industrial production from 29 to 32 was down 45%. Okay? I know you're sitting there saying, geez, John, why are you telling me this? In the 1930 census, I'm telling you, I'm giving you stuff nobody else is going to give you. Impress your friends and foes with all your knowledge, right? Just tell them where you got it. The U.S. population in 1930 was 122 million people across the 50 states. Well, I take that back. At that time, there wasn't 50 states. I believe there was 47. I believe Arizona wasn't a state yet, and I believe Hawaii and Alaska weren't states yet. But that was a 13% increase from the 1920 census. But what I'm going to highlight is when the Depression happened. And I got this statistic from the old movie, wait for it, Seabiscuit. And that was about a horse that ran in the Great Depression and gave people hope and stuff like that. That they talked about basically Tobey Maguire was the jockey, and his parents basically gave him away to a family that could feed him. That's how dire things were in this country back then. I know it's hard to believe, but that's what happened, right? And they were talking about he lived for a little bit in a homeless encampment in Oklahoma that they estimate was between 1 and 2 million people strong. Now try and get your head around that. That somewhere approximately 1 to 2% of the entire population in the United States was in one homeless encampment in Oklahoma. Wow. This isn't we're littering the streets of LA or San Francisco or New York or Houston with people on ramps and stuff like that. These people literally, how many people, think about this, how big of a landmass does that have to be where hypothetically, because it wasn't like they were doing census taking, that 1 million or 2 million people take up? Like how many hundreds of miles was that? I don't know. So, okay, John, give us some more good news. Well, here is the good news. Here is the good news. Pardon me, that in that election in November of that year, Herbert Hoover got 40% of the vote. Yeah, let me repeat that one more time and let that sink in for 1 second. He got 40% of the vote. The economy had collapsed. The banks had all failed. Wall Street was teetering on the verge of extinction. 25% of the people in this country were unemployed. And yet, 40% of the people in this country voted for the man who caused that. Now, their laments were they considered what the Democrats did in the Civil War in the aftermath, which was only 70 years ago. Talk about holding on to a grudge, to be grievous. And they also were angry because they wanted to still have prohibition. Okay. Forget the economy, forget everything else. They were holding on to that stuff. Now, FDR won a victory in 1932, and with it came a lot of amazing stuff, right? Now, what happened in the New Deal? Okay, let's talk. We got Social Security, which until Elon and the boy band of Nazis are through with it, has been running really well for 70 plus years. We had FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance. It basically says your money is safe in banks. You know why we got that? Because all the banks failed. This isn't A Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Don't worry, I'll pay you back, Mr. Fred. I'll pay you back. Yeah, well, okay. Most of the banks folded and nobody ever saw their money, right? Created unemployment insurance. Doesn't seem to matter to people until you're unemployed. And let me tell you something. I will never forget. I was unemployed for a year, and Obama extended unemployment insurance from 6 months to a year, and I will never forget what a wonderful thing that was. That was huge. You know, it's like I've said before, when your neighbor is unemployed, it's a recession. When you're unemployed, it's a depression. Don't let anybody tell you, oh, it's not that bad. F you. Go blow me. It is bad. When you get laid off, it is terrible on terrible. What else did FDR do? Public Works. Expanded the road system. You know, like living in here in Los Angeles. Literally all our freeways are a direct result of that program. The Tennessee Valley Authority. What's that, John, you say? Well, that was a program that was initially targeted to help the Tennessee Valley, obviously in Tennessee, a very depressed area, and they were going to build dams and causeways. In the South, for some reason, they call a dam a causeway. I couldn't tell you exactly what the difference is, but there's something. It's kind of like Pig Hegseth last week trying to tell me the difference between military plans, military action, and whatever that other battle plans. Like, okay, I don't know what the difference is, but maybe one day in therapy you can tell me. What he also did, what FDR did, and people don't realize this, is he created a fair economic system. Now, what do I mean by that? People up until that time, and you can look at the raw data, didn't believe they had a chance up against the big companies, the Rockefellers, the Fords, the whatever. Yeah, I know they came from nothing at one point, but at the end of the day, whatever niche they found, whatever backroom deal they found, they accumulated incredible power. The Vanderbilts, right? And the average guy didn't think they had a chance. FDR created a system where people didn't think they had to pay off somebody or know somebody to create something. And you look at, you know, let's talk about Al Gore, the great man who is Al Gore. He was one of the spearheads in the Senate to do the internet. He didn't create the internet, but he gave money to start the internet. Look at how much money is generated for this economy because of Google, Facebook, things like that. Instagram, Snapchat, blah, blah, blah. It literally seems like it's a bigger part of our economy than I can even tell you. The Democrats created a system where we all thought we had a shot. Now, whether we got there or not, that's a different thing. Now we're living in an administration where you figure you got to know somebody. It's all run by billionaires, and all they want to do is increase their power. You think they're trying to help us? Blow me. F that. F that and the horse they effing came in on. You think pricks like Howard Lufnick, who's joking about you not getting a Social Security check, you think he really cares? You think that guy literally, for 1 second of one day in his entire life, has thought about somebody who makes under $30,000 a year, whose health care got cut, whose food stamps didn't come? Do you think he gives a rat's ass? No, he doesn't think those people exist. He thinks they're fabrications of the media. Yeah, he sure does. And I got 2 words. Fuck you. Fuck you, Howard Lufnick, and then fuck you again. I hope you go to a San Salvador prison. All right. Sorry for running a little long tonight. Is a little different type of segment. If you could, hit that like and subscribe button. I love y'all. Don't be sad because we're leaving. Well, you're not going to be sad because I went so long tonight. But I really appreciate you. I love y'all. We're going to win. We're in this together. And like I showed you, even in the darkest of times of the Great Depression, we do survive. And things will get better. And I want to believe it because I know we're on the side of right. I know we're on the side of morality. And we are on the side of democracy. All right. I love you all, and I'll see you soon.